The second element, the Weaver stance.
The Weaver stance is an essential part of the modern technique. I would say that in most cases in which you are apt to use a handgun to defend yourself, you will use the Weaver stance. There are other systems, and we touch upon them. But because of the probabilities, we emphasize the Weaver stance over everything else. It's impossible to speak statistically because very few people have lethal encounters, and when they do, each encounter could be an exception. But somewhere on the order of 8 out of 10 defensive pistol situations call for the Weaver stance. Now, the stance is the entire body, from the feet to the top of the head. But the heart of the stance is the grip. Now, anyone can call anything he wants, but essentially a grip is what you do with your hand. That is a stock. If you want to call it grip, it's all right with me, but for purposes of this instruction, that is a stock and that is a grip. Possibly we had better take the round out of the chamber before we start playing. Two essentials of the grip are the centering of the hand behind the thruster recoil and the placement of the hand as high as you can make it work. The pistol recoils while the projectile is still in the barrel. Not very much, but just a little bit, enough to affect your placement of your shot. Therefore, if you place your hand on the weapon in a way that is not centered, you're going to get a deflection action on discharge. If you put your hand on your pistol like that, the pistol will recoil away from the wrist. So the idea is to put the bones of the wrist in line with the barrel and the forearm in line with the bones of the wrist, so that wherever you point, you are pointing essentially with your arm and not with a pistol barrel like this. The first point is to get it straight behind. The second point is to get it high. You don't want to grab it down here. We call that the Patagonian grip. And obviously, the lower you place your hand on the weapon, the more upward rotation there's going to be. People who complain about the recoil of a heavy pistol simply do not know how to put their hand on it. Because if you put your hand on it correctly, you don't have any problem with recoil. If the hand is placed properly on the weapon, the recoiling effect on discharge is negligible, without regard to the charge or the size of the weapon. For example, I can fire this piece with thumb and forefinger, without any effect in here. That's just thumb and forefinger. And it does away with the notion that you should be concerned about the recoiling action of the weapon. Now, the hand is so placed that the pad of the hand abuts upon the mainspring housing here. You don't put that back in there, you put it there. Your fingers are wherever they're most comfortable, but high enough so that the second finger touches the trigger guard. The index finger intersects the trigger so that the pad of the finger, not the crease nor the tip, but the pad touches the center of the trigger. Now, with weapons of this type, it's possible to obtain triggers of various lengths to suit the length of your finger. That's one of the advantages of having an old-style weapon. But this one is set up for me. Now, over here, the thumb. It is imperative that the thumb be carried on top of the safety, not below. Now, there are some who don't understand that, but I can tell you from experience that if you carry your thumb below the safety, sooner or later you're going to knock that safety on by mistake and put yourself out of the running. Don't carry your thumb under the safety. In addition, the grip is such that the knuckles of the thumb and the forefinger should be horizontal. If you drop your thumb down there, you get a lack of support and a sense of torquing action. But the important part of it is to make sure that the safety is always under your thumb and that you don't get in trouble that way. Obviously, if you are left-handed, you will call for safety on the other side of the weapon. But if you're not left-handed, you do not need that, because then with the left hand you can operate that safety just as well, perhaps not just as fast, but just as well in those occasions when you've broken your right arm or taken a shot or something like that. Now, there is your firing grip, and it is slightly different with the revolver, so let's look at that. With the revolver, the principles are the same, although the structure of the weapon makes the actual positioning of the hand somewhat different. This is called a recoil shoulder, and again, to get the weapon properly supported, you should place your hand high enough so that you can just barely see that recoil shoulder. This is working against you. Get your hand up on the weapon. Place your hand directly behind the weapon, again, so that the back strap intersects the pad of your hand here and not the fold. There. The thumb can be carried either high on the latch or down there. It's optional. I've seen it done both ways and done very well. Personally, I find that with a Smith, if I carry my thumb up there, where the recoil is, if the recoil is heavy, as with a 44 Magnum, I sometimes get a little bit abused in there, but that's easily corrected by putting a stock on here which brings you back. I don't fancy custom stocks on automatic pistols, but revolvers sometimes call for them. These stocks are so made as to fill this gap down here so you don't have the problem of cranking your hand. When you're with the revolver, since you're going to shoot it most of the time in the trigger cocking mode, like that, you do not put the tip of your pad of your finger on the trigger. You go all the way in to where the first crease intersects the right side. So, and your firing stroke is there. That approximately the same as with the auto, those slight differences.